contrary to what you've probably heard for years, your brain cannot multitask very well. And in fact, a study at the University of Michigan used MRI scanners to look at the brains of people as they took on different tasks. And the study showed that people who were told to do multiple things had difficulty doing them well, all of them. Moving from one task to another required a noticeable pause in brain activity. People had to go and shift from doing one thing to doing another, and there was a pause, there was a distinct stop. Now, if you've ever had multiple things going on at the same time, you know this makes sense. If you're a normal person and not a chef and not kind of ingrained in your brain, when you start cooking and you've got 5 things that you need to do at once, if you're like me, something's getting burned. Hopefully not your hand, but something is getting burned. Why? Because I can't give everything the time that it deserves. I can't focus on every part of what I'm trying to do at the same time. The point of all this is to say this: multitasking has become a badge of honor. High-capacity leaders have talked about multitasking. And what the study from the University of Michigan says is they're just making life difficult for themselves, at least most of them. When you apply for a job, have you noticed that many of the job requirements are you have to have an ability to multitask? It's almost a requirement. But the stress that it creates and the endless cycle of inaccuracy and misjudgment likely has a negative effect on most people's job performance. But there are people who swear by it. This is how they thrive. This is how they push forward and why they're so successful. And I've wondered why. It seems to me that those who welcome this kind of multitasking culture are highly driven, almost superhuman in their desire to achieve great things. That's not most of us. Most of us are just normal people who are trying to get by every day, right? But even if that is done well, even if someone can multitask well, the question then comes, is it healthy? More importantly, is it wise? This is something I think the preacher in Ecclesiastes discusses in chapter 2. He focuses here on work and whether or not any of it is all that important. See, many multitaskers conduct their business life literally as if it's life or death. And that's where I would agree with them. It is a matter of life and death, but not in the way that they would say. So let's see what God's word has to say in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, beginning in verse 12 and going through to the end of the chapter. The preacher says this: "So I turn to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, and there is more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this is also vanity. For of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life, because of what is done under the sun was grievous to me. For all is vanity and a striving after the wind. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This is also vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toils of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of his heart with which he toils beneath the sun. For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This is also vanity. There is nothing better for a person than he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given him wisdom and knowledge and joy, but to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. This is also vanity and a striving after the wind. I really like how this passage begins. Verse 12 comes after what we just saw earlier in chapter 2, where the preacher is groaning about how worthless everything is, and he says, "For what can a man do who comes after the king?" And you say, well, who's the king? Few interpretations are here for this, but what I think it is, and again, I could be wrong, but what I think it is he's talking about Adam. You say, well, Adam wasn't a king. Well, the word Adam is actually man. If you read through the Hebrew Old Testament, it's Adam. Adam means man. He was the first man, first human, first king. Everybody after him follows. And the preacher says, if my interpretation is right, again, it may not be, but the preacher is saying that Adam had everything he could have ever asked for. He had food, endless supply. He had a beautiful garden to live in. He had a wife. And even infinitely better than that, he had a one-on-one relationship with God that none of us will experience until we're in his presence. He had everything anybody could ever ask for. What more could he have wanted? He was created directly by God, brought from the dust of the ground by God's hands. And if you know the Genesis story, you know that Adam sinned. Because in his mind, he didn't have everything that he wanted. He wasn't satisfied with what God had provided. This is the root of all sin. We want more than what God has given to us, so we seek to fill those gaps. Rather than seeking after God's face, we seek more things. And so the preacher is saying, if Adam had everything and he still fell, what chance do we have? Ultimately, we're no different than our father Adam. He sinned because he wanted more than what God gave to him. His desire to know more, to have wisdom, an earthly wisdom, he put that ahead of pleasing God and obeying him. And our sin causes us to do the same thing. And the preacher is saying, is a human likely to come along who will be better than the King Adam, whom God made long ago? Now, some of you are thinking the exact same thing I'm thinking. And the answer is yes. It's just not any of us. What is Jesus called? The last Adam. Well, the first Adam couldn't do it. The last Adam could. So there is someone who would come. This is again pointing us to the gospel, pointing us to Jesus in Ecclesiastes. The preacher is saying, Adam couldn't do what you can't do either. You can't accomplish this because Adam couldn't. You're no better than Adam. Adam had way more resources than you did. Adam walked with God, like figurative, literally. We're figurative, like we're walking with God through reading of the Word and praying and having the supernatural peace. But Adam literally walked with God, and yet he couldn't do it. But the last Adam will. There is a better Adam that is to come. A better man is to come to rescue us all, to give us meaning, to give us purpose. Understanding the story of the gospel, reading Ecclesiastes in light of the gospel makes so much sense. You see that Jesus is the fulfillment of all of this. He lived a perfectly sinless life, something we could never do. And because of that, when we put our faith and our hope and trust in him, his perfection is then given to us. Just as if someone came and paid off your credit card bill, wiped away. Completely gone. No more debt. Nothing left to owe. And in a much greater way, Jesus paid the debt that we owed to God. He gave himself as a sacrifice. The Father gave him the judgment that belonged to us, that we deserved. And this is why Ecclesiastes can be read not with the Debbie Downer attitude, but it can be read with hope. Because this is what Jesus saved us from. This dark space, Jesus pulled us out. But we know that Ecclesiastes isn't the entire story. We know that this is a book that points us to a better answer. A wonderful story. Now, you've heard me say this, I think every week in Ecclesiastes, that this is the beginning of the gospel. The preacher is now aware of this. He's aware of his own mortality. He realizes that one day, and he's gathered all of these things, he's lived this life that any of us would dream to live, and yet he realizes one day he's going to die. Verse 16, he recognizes that all the fame he gains will one day be forgotten. He puts his hope in being remembered. I don't know about you, this is for someone who stands in front of people every week. Someone who delivers messages every single week and people come and listen to. Again, you're not here just to come listen to me, but this is part of the worship experience, is hearing the word proclaimed and the word preached. This is really hard for me. Because everything in me screams, be remembered. Do something that has impact. Make a name for yourself. Truth is, I want to have an impact. I want to be remembered. I would like, like how I quote people who've been dead for 300 years. That would be really cool. One day, 300 years from now, someone says, this guy, Ryan Roach, said this. It's not going to happen, but that would be pretty cool. But then I read and reread again, verses 14 through 16, and it hits me in the gut. The wise person has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this is also vanity. For of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance. Seeing that in the days to come all will have long been forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. Wisdom and fame still bring death. It's so relevant to me as I look back at the almost 2 years that we've been here, and I ask myself, what kind of legacy am I leaving? What am I working to do? And I'm going to be transparent with you, and I don't think this is a fireable offense. I hope it's not. I want to be transparent in my own sin, right? In my own thinking, in my own motivation for things. Is it always because I care about the spread of the gospel? Not always. Do I work hard and try to preach well and to do what I'm doing in order to 100% of the time give God the glory? No. The truth is, sometimes I want to be known. That's the transparent truth that hit me hard this week. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? It's vanity. It's all vanity. This is my story. And so I thought about this too. How many, and I'm a preacher and a pastor, and I thought to myself, I can't name that many. How many preachers can you name from 100 years ago? Maybe a few. How many preachers can you name from 10 years ago? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Because one day these sermons will be gone. One day the words that I write will be forgotten. One day my name will be nothing more than a few letters on a piece of paper. What am I doing? What are my motivations for this? I won't be remembered for very long, and the stark truth is, neither will you. The preacher is begging us to see this, to show how short our life really is and how worthless so much of what we do is as well. Verses 18 through 23, the preacher then switches to address something else that plagues us today. So not only are we seeking after things that are only for our vanity, not only are we seeking after things that don't last, the preacher then comes to work. And for some of us, for many of us, work kind of defines who we are. This sounds a lot like what we read last week. Solomon had built bigger temples and bigger palaces than anyone before him. He amassed more wealth than anyone else. He built aqueducts and parks and gardens, and he had peacocks and apes. He accomplished so much, but as he looked back on his life, he said that none of it was worth anything. He said everything that he had done was like grabbing after the wind, which is nonsense. And that's what he wants us to see. All of the things that are held in high esteem by society are worth nothing at all, and putting our hope in them leads us to bitterness and sorrow and disappointment because they can't satisfy. So then why work? Why work harder? Why hope to achieve better? Why do we try to improve our life? Well, first, we work hard because it's the Christian thing to do, right? The Bible tells us to work. God works, so he wants us to work. God, in the history of creation, worked for 6 days and then rested, modeling for us how to approach life. We work, and then we worship. We see in the New Testament that if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. So work is important. But here, doesn't the preacher in Ecclesiastes say that it doesn't matter what we do because it's all worthless? Just, again, bringing it home to me, I hope that you would expect me to work and to do something. Some of you may have questions, but that's okay. I've been asked, all you do is work for an hour every week, right? But the truth is, this is my job, so I can devote my energy and my mental capacity to this calling. But what if I stopped caring? What if I didn't prepare to preach or to teach? And I stopped coming to meetings or stopped going to meet people for counseling? And I just, when you confronted me, I said, it's all just chasing after the wind. Now you open the door and let me go after that wind, right? So how do we balance this? We see in Scripture that so much of what we do is chasing after the wind, but we know that in our lives we would never accept someone who's just being lazy and just giving up on everything and saying that everything's worthless, so why try? How do we respond to this? Well, we open up our Bibles and we see that work is important to God. We also see that because of this, we are created to work, and so we will continue to work in heaven. Some of you are like, no, I don't want to do that. You're out of your mind? It's time for rest. The easy life. Kind of sipping on a straw with an umbrella on it, right? We want to sit in a lounge chair and enjoy the sun forever. Jesus said, my Father is working until now, and I am working. He also said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. I had a lady who was hung up on this, and she argued with me to no end about this, and she said, I am not going to work in heaven. I will not. I've done it, and I'm not going to do it anymore. And then we see what Jesus says. Now, if you read the entire Bible, you see where does the history of humanity begins? It begins in a garden, doesn't it? And then if you read all the way through to Revelation, where does it end? It returns to a garden. And what did God tell Adam and Eve that they had to do? He didn't say, here's all the food, and I'm going to provide it, and you can just sit back and enjoy the easy life. No, he said, go work the garden. Work has been a part of our story since the beginning, and it's still today. But if our story ends in the garden with Jesus returning to establish his perfect earthly kingdom, don't you think the same system that was set up for Adam and Eve will be there for us as well? He got to work, and so will we. So the issue is not that work is bad, but what sin does. Sin makes work toil. See, this is the difference. Work is good, toil is not. Toil is not, well, ultimately, work is doing something that you're passionate about, something that gives you vitality and energy. You know hopefully you have jobs like this, the projects that you have, and you get excited. You're waking up in the morning and you can't wait to hit the ground running. You have something exciting to do. Toil is when you were like me, and I prayed, not even kidding, I prayed that I would get sick every single Sunday because I didn't want to go in on Monday. I hated not here. Every single weekend I prayed, give me something so I don't have to go in. See, sin makes work something to be avoided. It distorts the correct view of God and his design, and it makes it into something awful. We don't enjoy work because it's hard and painful and exhausting. But when we do enjoy it, when we do get something out of it, we experience a little taste of worship. God's created us to work. We get the fruits of that, and when it works all together, it is a beautiful thing. So for the preacher, much of this comes down not to the action that's being done, but the motivation for doing something. And as we've seen so far, if our motivation is simply money or prominence or the easy life or to do something for a season and then never have to do anything again and just relax and sit back, we're doing it for the wrong reasons. So the big idea in all of this is that work is good, but work is not good in and of itself. It's only good when it's done for the right reasons. Even satisfaction in a job well done is a gift from God. So our work is done for one singular purpose, and it's to bring God glory. And so this is the question he asks the preacher in verse 22. What good does all your work bring? If your aim for work is to build wealth, to get rich, to advance to prominence, to make a name for yourself, to be famous, all of those things that we keep getting pushed, this is what the good life is. You're working for the wrong reasons. The preacher says, what has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? This may not apply to everybody, but this certainly applies to some of us. What good is our work? What good are the hours spent away from family? What good are those late nights when you've missed a game or a performance? What good are those long trips that took you away from seeing your children grow up? What good is a title or a corner office? What good are those things? The preacher answers this all through Ecclesiastes. To summarize what we've read and what we're going to see later, the answer to those things is they aren't worth anything. You work and you work and you work and you gain notoriety, but then you come to the end of your life and not one person have I met with laying on their deathbed that said, man, I wish I would have worked more. I wish I would have had a better title. I wish I would have had an office with a view. If I just had a little bit more money. You know who everyone's asking for? Two things, family and Jesus. What good is our work? The point is driven home to me every time I speak to people outside of the church. Every industry has well-known people. So if you're in business, there are books and books written by successful business people. If you're in sales, those annoying videos from salesmen pop up on your YouTube feed, right? These guys are trying to convince you to how to be a jerk to customers and make a lot of money. But if you're not interested in that, you'll never see those, right? So you won't know who those guys are. We have a culture in ministry as well. We go to conferences and we have our favorite preachers and we read our favorite books by authors that we like. We listen to sermons, and there are people who I've admired for years that you wouldn't even know who they are. Most of you wouldn't. I was at a big conference one year. Actually, I think it was 7 years ago today. And at a big conference, and the convention center was connected to the Atlanta airport by a monorail. And so there weren't a lot of food options, and so the easiest place to go get lunch during the break was to hop on the monorail and go to the food court at the airport, which is always fun. And so we're sitting eating Taco Bell or something, and we're looking up, and my friend nudges me and says, "Hey, that's John Piper over there." Now, if you don't know who John Piper is, this just proves my point. But John Piper is one of my favorite preachers ever, maybe the most influential preacher of this generation. And I'm seeing him waiting in line. I mean, we're 30 feet away. He's waiting in line to get barbecue. I guess he had just gotten off his plane and he's ready to eat his lunch. And I'm watching everything that's happening here. And now John Piper, if you don't know who John Piper is, he looks almost identical to Larry David. If you don't know who Larry David is either, look that up. But they look, even his son posted this week a picture of both of them, and they look exactly the same. This writer of Seinfeld. John Piper is this guy, he's got elbow patches on his old sport coat. He's kind of got unkempt hair, what he has left. And he's standing in line waiting to get barbecue, and people are coming up and taking pictures with him. And I looked up at the ladies behind the counter who are bringing this man food, this man who is a celebrity in my circles, right? I've got books, 10, 12 books that he's written in my office. I've watched him preach more than any other preacher I've ever watched. And here he's standing getting barbecue, and these women and men behind the counter have no earthly idea why these people are coming up to this little old man and taking pictures. It was the strangest, most surreal picture I've ever seen. But this illustrates the point, doesn't it? Outside of the few thousand people that were there at that conference, not one person in that airport knew who he was. We came to hear him and other preachers, but no one else knew. He's literally sold millions of books. By the way, he gives all of that money away from books. He keeps nothing. He sold millions of books, and if he were to stand here today and preach to you, many of you, some of you may not even have any idea who he is. He's made it. He's got influence. And what does it say that if someone like him will one day be forgotten, someone like him will one day just be a name on a sheet of paper or some video somewhere in the ether? What does it say about us? We can find the answers to that in verses 24 through 26. The first part of verse 24 shows us that we should enjoy life, enjoy the fruits of our labor. Now, here's the question. Is this somehow contradictory? I just got done saying we shouldn't put our hope in what we do or how we can make a name for ourselves, but now I'm saying that you should enjoy what you've created or done through your business. Well, look at the second half of this. There is nothing better for a person than he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given him wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting only to give to the one who pleases God. This is also vanity and a striving after the wind. What the preacher is saying here is that the ability to enjoy anything is a gift from God. See, it's easy to get wrapped up in our accomplishments and what we've done with our lives, whether it's on the job or at home or in the church. And we can tell ourselves that we're hard workers and determination has gotten us to this point. But who gave us those gifts? Who gave us the opportunities? Who's given us life and breath and a mind and talents? And what do we do with those? As I said before, do I always use whatever I've been given to glorify God? Unfortunately not. And this is what the preacher's doing here. He's putting two competing worldviews. There's really only two ways to go here directly in front of us. He said that there are those who strive to achieve more and collect more and to gather more. And those are the ones that he has seen to experience life in a way that tells them that there is ultimately so much more than just hoarding things. So you have one end, you have someone who's just gathering things, and the other says there's more to life. See, these words are thousands of years old, but they're so applicable. This is why I wanted to preach Ecclesiastes. Because nothing has changed. We are trying to find purpose and meaning in our life. And I hope what you're doing right now is thinking through some of those things like I have, where you've said or you've done things or the motivation behind what you do. You're starting to think, oh man, I'm uncomfortable. I advanced from the bottom to the top of my company. I doubled my salary in 3 years. I manage 100 employees. I homeschool all 15 of my children. I preach in front of 1,000 people. I've got 25 campuses of church. We strive and we strive, even as Christians, to figure out how to fill this need that seems so natural to us. We crave purpose. We want meaning in our lives more than anything. And the preacher understands this. That's why he says what he says. He doesn't want you or anyone else to fall into the dangerous pit that he found himself in. He's tried everything, and nothing else brought him pleasure. Maybe this is you. Maybe you've tied your identity to something. It's your job. Maybe it's your kids. I've been there. Those weekends of travel ball tournaments. Everything that they want, you try to give to them. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe your knowledge, your wealth, your status. Whatever it is, you may have looked at yourself only as someone who produces or who has value because others have placed that on you. It's dangerous. Your value is not in what you've done or what you know or what you're worth to someone else. Your value as a human being comes from the simple fact that you are created in the image of God. Every single person, regardless of any of those things that we set to define each other and to differentiate each other. You are a valued creation because you are created in the image of God. That's something animals and plants and anything else in all creation cannot say. You are valuable simply because you are created by God. And if you are a Christian, not only are you created by God, you have been recreated into the likeness of Christ. Those who turn from their sin and instead turn to Christ have been recreated into his image. You are a child of God. And this is why the gospel is easy to see here. The preacher wants us to see this worth, so we allow it to color everything else in life. And again, please know, riches and fame are not problematic in and of themselves. It's what motivates us. It's what we chase after that matters. And so do you think that someone who belongs to Christ forgot that in favor of chasing riches or fame? Or should the blessings that God has given us, whether it is riches or fame or notoriety, do you think that we should be reminded of how foolish all of that stuff is in comparison to Jesus? Because again, someone who has all of that, I've met them, I know them, they'd say they give up everything in order to honor the Lord. So here's the warning Ecclesiastes gives us. It's sharper than it may sound at first. You can live your whole life running from task to task, from promotion to promotion, from sermon to sermon, paycheck to paycheck, goal to goal, telling yourself that it all matters, telling yourself that it's urgent, and telling yourself that it's life and death. And in the end, you come to the realization that the preacher came to. You weren't running toward life at all. You were running to your funeral. Every late night, every sacrificed relationship, every restless evening, every anxious morning, every ounce of energy spent trying to be remembered, trying to matter, trying to prove something, all of it was carrying you closer to the same place that every single other person ends up at. The wise die, the fools die, the famous die, the forgotten die. The question is not whether you're running, the question is what you're running for. Because when Christ is not the finish line, even your best work becomes a treadmill, just running and going nowhere. But when Christ is your goal, your work becomes worship, your rest becomes gratitude, and your life no longer races towards death, but rather toward resurrection. This is the hope that every Christian has, not in a grave and not in people crying over the fact that you're no longer here, but the fact that you've been resurrected, you've been made new, you are standing with the King of all creation and working and worshiping him. So slow down. lift your eyes. Stop running to your funeral. Instead, run to Christ, the only one who went into death and came out the other side, so that your life would not be vanity, but joy from the hand of God.